What is the scariest or most unexplainable thing that has happened to you while home alone? Story 1. Not home alone, but upstairs alone. I saw a doppelganger of my mom a few years back, and I think she heard mine. I was sitting in my bed and looked up when I heard her coming up the stairs. She walked by my door looking straight at me with no expression, and walked into her room and closed the door. I'd said hi as she walked but figured whatever. She didn't hear me, or maybe she was getting something from her room. Then, about 5 seconds later, she yells up the stairs from downstairs and says, "Did you call me?" And I am not ashamed to say I freaked the F out. She came upstairs, looked down the hall and said, "Did you close my door?" I didn't, and neither did she. She never closed that door, because one of our cats primarily lived in her bedroom, and so she always kept the door open so the cat could come and go as she pleased. And it wasn't just closed as if the wind had shut it, it was fully closed, and the windows were shut. May said she had very clearly heard me yell, "Hey Mom, come here," from upstairs. I had done no such thing. I'm never entirely sure what I believe and what I don't, but I was totally sober, not tired, and it wasn't some movement out of the corner of the eye thing. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. A few years back, I was home alone during a power storm. I went into the bathroom to take a dump, and at the exact time I was crapping, I sneezed. Well, the power went out as well. The house was pitch black, and I literally thought I crapped myself blind. I couldn't see my hands, so, in a panic, I was yelling, "No, this cannot be true." I was in a panic, feeling for the toilet paper to wipe and flush. After completing the task, I just sat on the toilet trying to figure out how to tell everyone I know that I literally crapped myself blind by sneezing while dumping. After about 2 minutes of complete darkness, dread, and panic, lightning struck outside and lit up my hallway. Best damn feeling ever. I told this story to a few friends one night about 3 years ago, and they laughed quite hard and still joke with me about it. When the question came up on here, scary in the sense most people responded, never popped in my mind, but crapping myself blind did. Story 3. Back in high school, I'd usually be up all hours of the night playing games. I had a large dog at the time that would sleep in my room at night. It was 2 a.m., and I was finally headed to bed, but my dog wasn't with me, so I ventured out to find him. I made my way across the house to the kitchen/dining room combo. I'm standing in the only door frame that leads to that side of the house. We had an island in the kitchen with a stool that the junk mail was usually kept on. So, I walk up, call for my dog, and see him walk from behind the island to behind the dining room table set, knocking all the junk mail down as he did so. I huff and flip on the light. No dog. I freak out, scramble back across the house, and end up finding him in my parents' room. I regale the story the next day to my parents and younger sister, who often claimed to see stuff in the house. My sister pipes up and goes, "Oh, that's the tall black thing. Yeah, sometimes it likes to crawl around on all fours." Big nope. I didn't sleep for the rest of the week. Story 4. The first house I moved into after high school while going to college was a very old, very small house in a town that dated back to the Civil War. I lived there with 3 other guys, since rents were high, but we made it work. The house was built on a hill and had a small driveway in front with a U-shaped driveway in back. It had a full basement and was owned by someone with multiple rental properties in the area. They told us we had full access to the upstairs, but that they used the downstairs for storage, and to never go down there because it was full of their stuff. We never questioned it, because the rent for this particular location for our area was low. We were still technically on campus, but our house was surrounded by other college students, so we could have parties whenever we wanted to. Everything was great, until we started having unwanted visitors. At first, things were pretty easy to ignore or completely write off. A roommate home by themselves would walk into a room and the lights would be on when they were home alone and hadn't flipped any switches. Someone else would hear a faucet turn on and off in a room with no one in it. We tried to do what research we could at the time and found that water pressure can cause faucets to do some crazy things on their own, and that power surges can do similar things with flickering lights. Unfortunately, things kept getting stranger. At one point, one roommate, who was home alone, got out of the shower, looked into the mirror to start shaving, and noticed that someone else stepped out of the shower behind him and left the room. He searched the house, but couldn't find anyone else home at the time. Later on, a different roommate had several items go missing out of his room, including his keys and a pocket knife. He later found them in our microwave. Again, no one else was home at the time. Me, personally, I got home on a day when nobody else was at the house for the next couple of hours in between classes. There was a folding chair on the front porch next to the door, and I had an armload of books. I set the books down in the chair, unlocked, and pushed open the front door, turned and picked up my books. And when I went to walk into the house, the door slammed in my face. I thought the wind had caught the door and went to open it, but discovered that the door had locked itself again, both handle and deadbolt. Last of all, 3 of us were sitting together on a couch watching TV when we heard a loud, heavy thud, as though something had been dragged off of a bed in the back bedroom. All 3 of us later confirmed that we could distinctly hear both footsteps walking through the house as well as the sound of something heavy being dragged behind. Last of all, the back door opened and slammed shut, even though we were all in the living room, and there was supposed to be no one else in the house. A week later, we started to smell gas in the house. We called the authorities in the middle of the night, and they searched the house with us waiting on the front lawn. Finally, they told us that they couldn't find a gas leak and asked us to open the basement. We had never been in there, at our landowner's request. But since the fire department was asking, we opened the garage door. Right in front of us was a Honda Shadow motorcycle with a large pool of gasoline underneath it where the gas tank had apparently leaked underneath it and the rest of the house. The firefighter saw this and decided to leave, while we were left to look around the rest of the basement. Most of what we found were shelves and shelves of canned vegetables, but in the very middle of the floor, under everyone's bedrooms, was a mortuary table and a second device. I'm still not sure what the second device was. It was cylindrical, with a small viewport in the front door. It seemed to have some places on the back for hoses or pipes to connect to it, although nothing was attached when we found it. It was about the right size for a couple of 2 liters of soda to fit inside. Soon after, we found out that our landowner worked night shifts at a local hospital. Whatever it might have been, we decided that enough was enough and we all decided to move out as soon as our leases were up. I was the last one there, and I promise that the last 7 days I spent there alone are the longest days I've spent anywhere since. I am a self-described cynic who doesn't believe in the supernatural, but I can also admit when I have absolutely no explanation for a set of events. I'm sure some Reddit scientists will be able to explain everything that happened to me now that many years have passed, but I don't need their explanations anymore. I just accept that being in old houses alone is not a good idea, and do my best to avoid them altogether. Story 5. So, I was in my room, and I lit 2 long taper candles for some ambiance while I was playing guitar late at night. I was facing the other direction, looking out the window while playing, and shortly later turned around and went back towards the candles, and discovered one of them was completely gone. The stand was still there, but no melted wax, just a bare candle holder, and the other one was still lit, and no shorter than it was when I lit them. It was almost 3 a.m., and I was so terrified that I got in my car and left and drove to my dad's house. Story 6. Not my story, but a friend from college. A house her family lived in for a while when she was a kid had an attic that ran the length of the house, and the access was through a door in the back of her brother's closet at the far end. Their parents forbid them from messing around up there because it was filled with boxes from previous tenants. Landlord said, "I don't care if you look through them, but I don't know what's in there, so do so at your own risk." And because if someone got hurt by something falling on them or something, it might go unheard or unnoticed until too late. To make things weirder, at the very back end of the attic, so right above her bedroom, there was a little locked room. Well, friend starts getting woken up at night by the sound of someone moving around quietly, which always turns into rapid, quiet creaking, almost right above her. She figures it's her brother, because he'd have to cross over their parents' room as well. She figured he'd get caught eventually, and just did her best to ignore the sound or think about what a teenage boy might be doing to cause it. One day during the summer, she slept in on a weekend. When she woke up, she looked outside and saw her parents working on the big produce garden they'd put in. She went and got some breakfast, then went back up to her room to play with her Game Boy. For the first time after months of getting woken up, she heard the noises during the day. Curious to catch him in the act, she crept into her brother's room. The closet door was open. The attic access was open. She quietly went up the steep and narrow stairs until she could just peek in, and saw first that a path had been cleared, and then that the mattress her dad had wedged in front of the little room had been slid aside. Most surprising, however, was that the locked door at the back was ajar. Her brother stuck his head out, saw her right away, and smiled, calling her over. "You gotta come see this," and then pulled back inside of the dark room. She said that the only other time she had ever felt so instantly, totally instinctually afraid was her first time hearing a cougar scream at night in the woods. She instantly noped and flew all the way downstairs and to the yard to tattle on her brother, only to see him hauling stuff around and helping their parents, as he'd been all morning and afternoon, apparently. Shocked and afraid of not being believed, even they asked why she looked so afraid, she simply answered, "I think there's someone in the attic." When pressed, she said she heard footsteps and saw that the door was open when she went to look. Dad swore and went and got his gun from his truck and instructed them to wait 15 minutes. If he didn't come back out, they were to all get in the truck and drive to the neighbor's place a couple miles down and call the police. No cell phones back then. He went in, and after a very anxious wait, he came back out pissed as hell, demanding the kids fess up who had been messing around up there. Both denied it, and the family went to look as a unit, with friend reluctantly bringing up the rear. Someone had indeed pushed all the boxes and the mattress out of the way. The door was indeed unlocked and open. All that was inside, no light, no window, was an old rocking chair, and everything covered in decades of dust, with no sign that anyone but them had been in the room at all. No streaks, no footprints, just some ancient mouse crap and an old chair. Brother pointed to this as proof he couldn't have been the one, because how would he leave no signs? In the absence of other explanations, Dad didn't buy it. Brother got grounded for the next couple weeks for breaking the rules and sneaking around, and friend refused to go back to the attic the rest of the time they lived there, sleeping on the couch in the downstairs living room when she could get away with it, because the sound of steps and the rocking would still regularly wake her up. Story 7. This happened to me a couple of years ago. I have also lived on my own a long time, so do not get scared easily. I had just finished reading in bed, and I turned my lamp off and settled down to go to sleep, and hugged my cat up close to me. This would be about 1:30 in the morning. I closed my eyes and I heard a voice say meow, like imitating a cat. My window was open, so I thought it was just someone being weird outside. I opened my eyes, and in the middle of my bedroom was a small boy wearing a red jumper, waving his arm above his head. I leapt up like a goddamn ninja and put the light on. My heart was going mad. Now, nothing paranormal has happened in this house, ever in the entire time I have lived here. I spent the whole night totally freaked out, only getting a bit of sleep when it started to get light outside. My friends thought this was hilarious when I told them. I was saying there is no way I am living in a haunted house, and started Googling cleansing, exorcists and whatnot. The next few nights, other weird stuff started happening. I started sleeping with the TV on, and as soon as I tried to get any sleep, I would hear freaky voices coming from it, or I would notice shadows dipping by the side of my bed. It was dreadful. I actually resorted to saying out loud, "I'm really tired, so if you could not haunt me for one night, I would be really grateful." I had never really believed in any of this sort of stuff before, so it was like an entire paradigm shift for me. Anyway, I was going on about this to my friends at work, and one of them asked if I was on drugs. Well, funnily enough, I had just started taking this new tablet for my asthma. When I got home, I read the side effects, a rare one being hallucinations. I stopped taking them immediately, and there haven't been any more hauntings. Update: I did some research myself after I realized what was happening, and I found out that it was prescribed mainly to children and to those who struggle with taking an inhaler here in the UK at least. My asthma was going through a bad patch, so they tried a few different meds on me. I remember thinking, if you were a little kid and started seeing stuff like that every night and had no idea that it was the tablets causing it, the thought doesn't bear thinking about. Also, nothing has ever happened in my house since then. Everything is completely normal, and I now can sleep with the lights off like a proper adult. Story 8. One night I was watching The Conjuring at home with my little sister when we heard someone putting a key into our front door and opening it. We were sitting in the living room, next to a sliding door that was very close to the front door, so we both heard it very clearly. Now this didn't alarm us since we knew our dad had recently gone out to get some stuff, so we just assumed he had returned. "Dad, you sir back already?" I casually asked. There was no response. "Dad?" I asked again, thinking that he had not heard me the first time. Again, silence. At this point, I get the feeling that something isn't quite right, and I could tell by the look on my sister's face that she was quite nervous as well. I'll note that up to this point, she had spent the evening rolling her eyes at horror movie cliches, and she very rarely gets scared. We looked at each other for a moment, wondering what we should do before we started hearing a few more scattering sounds from right outside the sliding door. I was frozen in fear by this stage. I tried one more time in a louder but shakier voice. "Dad, is that you? Please respond. Please respond," repeated in my head. But the silence continued. Now, at this point, I'm freaking out, and I literally jumped off the couch. My sister also abruptly gets up and starts rapidly walking towards the other end of the room, which leads to the kitchen area. She later revealed to me that she was planning on grabbing a knife. She had this horrified look on her face that I hadn't seen before. We looked at each other in nervous silence. I didn't really know what to do, and I didn't want to make any further sounds. I finally decided to walk up to the sliding door and began opening it as slowly as possible, peering into the darkness. I know, I literally became the idiot who investigates the unknown, creepy noise without anything to protect myself with. When the door was finally open wide enough, I poked my head out and scanned the corridor, preparing for the worst. To my surprise, there was no one there. But what was more strange was that the front door was still completely shut. We never heard the door close. My sister and I were obviously both extremely relieved, as we were almost certain that there was an intruder in the house. After this, I immediately went to ask my mum, who was situated in her bedroom at the other end of our house, if it was her or whether she had noticed anything. She told me that she thought my dad had come home, as well as she also heard someone opening the front door. Around half an hour later, which felt like an eternity at the time as we were still quite shaken from the incident, my dad finally arrived home and confirmed that he had not come home earlier. To this day, my sister and I still have no idea what happened that night. Story 9. I was babysitting a kid who had a video monitor and was told that she wouldn't wake up while the parents were out, and if she did, to call them right away. I was watching TV with the monitor set off to the side to keep an eye on her, and right around 11, the camera's view shifted a few inches. It then began to slightly jiggle like someone was messing with it. I was squinting at it, trying to decide what I was actually seeing, and I kid you not, the whole screen burst into static for a few seconds, and the kid started wailing. She stood up and was screaming in her crib just like one of the kids from The Sims. When she didn't fall back asleep, after a few minutes I called the mom, and she said, "Okay, we're on our way home anyway. We think she has nightmares, sometimes it's fine." And I never babysit again. Story 10. When I was a kid, I had these life-size Power Ranger dolls. They were about 3 feet tall, and I used to station them around my canopy bed at night, like little guardians. I genuinely believed they were protecting me while I slept. One day, when I was around 4 or 5, I decided I was going to bring all of them to preschool for show and tell. I was so excited, gathering them up to take downstairs. But just as I was getting ready, something wild happened. The red Power Ranger came to life and pushed me down the stairs. I only vaguely remember the incident now, but when I brought it up at a recent family gathering, my mom filled in some details that gave me chills. She said it wasn't the first time I'd talked about the red Power Ranger being lifelike. Apparently, when we lived in that apartment, I was often heard talking to people who weren't there. The day I said the Red Ranger pushed me down the stairs scared my parents so badly that they packed us up and we stayed with my grandmother until they could find a new place to live. Needless to say, the Power Rangers didn't come with us. Story 11. I don't generally believe in ghosts, but here's a weird one from high school. Not my home, obviously, but I was alone in the bathroom when this happened. My school bathrooms had really loud, heavy doors. The door to the bathroom and the stall doors were so creaky, there was no way you wouldn't hear someone coming in or leaving. One day my friend group was on the benches near the washroom, so at some point during lunch I go to use it. I was in one of 3 stalls, probably browsing my phone or pooping, when I heard someone come in crying and shut herself in the stall furthest from me. I was one end of the wall, she was the other, so I couldn't see her feet from my stall. I asked if she was okay but didn't get a response. She just kept crying. I finished my toilet business and left my stall to go knock on her stall door and see if she was okay. But to my surprise and fear, the bathroom was empty. The stall doors were all open, and I didn't hear anyone leave either the stall or the bathroom exit. I even walked into the stall. I thought she was in and checked. Honestly, when this happened, I thought I just wasn't paying attention and didn't hear the girl leave, but then about a week or two later it happened again in the same bathroom. My friends knew I didn't believe in ghosts, but when I told them, they could all tell that I wasn't joking. Story 12. A few years ago, I was home alone in my basement playing video games when I heard the door that connects my kitchen to the garage creak open and slam shut. But I never heard the actual mechanical garage door open. Then I heard heavy footsteps of someone wearing boots walking the length of my kitchen directly above me. I originally thought, oh, my brother must have forgotten something, as he had left about 5 minutes before that, for work. So I was about to yell up to him to make fun of him, but something in the back of my mind was telling me, hold on, something's not right here. So I muted my TV, to both hear better and to stay quiet. Then I heard the footsteps turn around and walk back to the door, and again I hear it creak open and slam shut. But again, I never heard the actual mechanical garage door open or close. So I slowly walked upstairs thinking maybe my brother just forgot to close the garage door. I slowly opened the door to my garage and saw that the garage door had been closed the entire time. The only 2 explanations I can come up with are either something paranormal happened or someone broke into my house, walked through my kitchen and left without taking anything, while also not letting me hear them open my garage door. In my opinion, both are equally terrifying to me. Story 13. Seeing a door open that you know 100% you closed. At the time I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment that had a very large storage closet. One of my friends went overseas for a 2-year posting, so I let him store a bunch of stuff in the closet. It was packed full, so the door was always shut, and I never opened it because nothing of mine was in it. I woke up one morning, and the cupboard door was open. Obviously that was weird, so I closed it. A couple of days later, same thing. I shut it again. I checked the doorknob thinking maybe it was broken or sticking, but nothing was weird. I checked the contents of the closet to make sure nothing had somehow slipped and maybe knocked the door open, but there was nothing out of place. It kept happening. Every few days the door was open. I also started to notice other weird things like cupboard doors open, things not where I left them, such as salt and pepper shakers were moved to the counter when I knew they were on the stove the last time I used them, or random dishes would appear in the sink. I got pretty freaked out about it, thinking someone was coming into my apartment, either while I was sleeping or at work. Then one morning I wake up and there is sugar poured all over my counter and down the side of my stove and on the kitchen floor, and then it hits me I'm doing it. I am sleepwalking. When I saw the sugar, I had a vague memory of a dream the night before pouring sugar into a coffee, and when I checked my bed there was sugar in it that I had tracked into bed from walking in the kitchen. I have been sleepwalking on and off since I was a little kid. I assumed I had outgrown it, but apparently not. Story 14. I was in my college apartment, and my roommate had just moved out. Her room was directly across from mine with the living room between us. I had cleaned out her room, and then closed the door. I left my bedroom door open. When I went to take a shower one night, my bathroom was connected to my bedroom. I also happened to leave the bathroom door open. While I was in the shower, I thought I heard a woman talking. I had never been able to hear my neighbors talking before, but figured they just happened to be talking in their bathroom, which shared a wall or something. When I got out of the shower, I was surprised to see a black void when there should have been the bright white closed door of my old roommate's door reflecting in the moonlight. I figured I just forgot to close the door and went and closed it. The next night, I once again went to take a shower and left my room and the bathroom door open. But this time, I checked to make sure the other door was latched, and the front door was double locked. When I came back out, I once again saw the void with the door wide open. I slammed my door closed and locked that thing so fast. I convinced myself there was a logical explanation, so the next night I once again checked all of the doors and then closed my bedroom door. This time, I came out of the shower and my bedroom door was open along with the other door. I showered and slept with my bedroom door locked from that point on. I guess this took place over several nights home alone, and I may not have even been alone. Still the creepiest thing that ever happened though. Story 15. Many years ago, when my now 28-year-old daughter was still an infant, me, her, and our dog were at the apartment we were living in at the time. My wife was at work, I was sitting on the couch watching TV, my daughter was asleep on a blanket pallet on the floor, and the dog, a German Shepherd Wolf hybrid mix, was about 10 feet away laying in the doorway between our kitchen and the living room area. At any rate, I was watching whatever it was that I was watching when all of a sudden, Thor, our dog, starts with this low-level guttural growling. I figure that he had heard someone in another apartment or walking by through the parking lot and don't think much of it. As a few seconds pass, I notice that it's getting louder and I can see out of the corner of my eye that he has lifted his head up off his paws, his ears are perked, and he's looking up at the ceiling over where my daughter was laying. I look up, don't see anything, and tell him to knock it off. Right after I tell him to knock it off, he jumps up, starts circling my sleeping daughter, literally walking around the pallet she's laying on, and growling more and more intensely, even stopping once and outright snarling, and snapping his teeth, all while staring up at the ceiling. After about 2 minutes of this, and me having no clue on what to do since I can't see anything, and I do not want to reach for my daughter with him circling her like that, he laid down next to my daughter, rested his head on her back, and stayed there for almost an hour, still intently staring up at the ceiling, and occasionally growling. To this day, I have no idea what the hell was going on or what he saw or sensed, but it was extremely creepy to me. Story 16. I fully expect skepticism towards my comment, but all I can say is that I know what I experienced. So, when I was 17, I moved in with my boyfriend, future husband, and his mother and younger brother and sister. He and his family are Colombian, and at the time his mother practiced Santeria. She had a Santeria shrine in her bedroom closet, and her boyfriend would sacrifice small animals in the garage. At the time, my boyfriend worked until 10 at night, and didn't get home until 10:30 or 11. His mother, brother, and sister were usually busy in the evenings with work and school stuff, and didn't get home until after dark. So, I was left home alone with just my cat most nights. My boyfriend and I had the downstairs bedroom, while his mom and siblings' rooms were upstairs. Every night, I would hear loud footsteps on the ceiling while in the bedroom, coming from his mom's room. I tried ignoring it, but the more I ignored it, the louder they got. After a week of the loud footsteps, the talking and laughing started, low at first, but then every night, it seemed to get louder and louder. I started to get scared and would lock myself and my cat in the bedroom until someone got home. After almost 3 weeks of this, I finally said something to my boyfriend. He believed me and told me it was the spirits his mother communicated with during her Santeria rituals. I told him it freaked me the hell out. He said as long as I stay out of her room, they won't bother me. Wrong. A few nights later, I was alone again and decided to get something to eat. The stairs leading to the second floor started in the kitchen, and when I went into the kitchen, I heard the light patter of feet. I looked over to where the sound came from and saw a small human-like figure dart up the stairs. I ran to the stairs and saw the flurry of a white dress turn the corner into his mom's room. See, his mother had this African doll that wore a white peasant dress, and she used this doll in her rituals sometimes. Well, seeing that lit a fire under my bum. I grabbed my cat and sat in the spare car in the driveway until someone came home. His mom came home first and asked why I was sitting in the car with the cat. I told her everything, and she got this serious look on her face and asked me if I followed the doll into her room. I said hell no. Good, she said. I'll make sure she doesn't leave the room again. And I'll make sure she knows that she's not to harm you. Don't worry. When my boyfriend got home, I told him what happened and that I wanted out of this house. He agreed, and we moved into our own place the following month. We've been married almost 17 years now, and his mother still has that doll. It sits on a rocking chair in her bedroom. Every time I see that doll, I swear it's like its eyes are following me around the room. Story 17. Hey, an opportunity to drop one of my weird stories. When I was in college at Georgia Tech, I stayed at a building known as the GLC. It was on the far north side of campus, away from most of the colleges, so not too many people stayed at it. I liked it because it was quiet and very easy to rebook my same room due to the lack of demand. When I say it was quiet, I mean we barely ever heard our neighbors, if we even had them, really, only ever hearing other people when they slammed the heavy outer doors. This event happened during Thanksgiving break. I always stayed on campus during Thanksgiving to get work done and chill in peace. My 3 roommates were gone, however, so the quiet GLC was even more silent. I was cleaning my room at the time and I had gotten out a bottle of Febreze. Now this is important because one of my roommates hated Febreze and would complain even if I sprayed it in my room because the AC would spread it around the apartment. So I took the opportunity to spray some and get the college boy musk gone. As soon as I sprayed it, I heard one of my roommate's doors fly open and slam close and angry heavy footsteps stomp into and around the living room. I thought I had screwed up and really pissed off my roommate, but I did find it odd how quickly and aggressively he was reacting to it. I went into the living room to apologize. I even was saying something along the lines of, "Sorry man, I didn't know you were here," but as soon as I came into the room the sound stopped and no one was there. I was so convinced I had heard someone that I even knocked on my roommate's doors, but they were gone. I texted them and confirmed that they were gone, and I was all alone. I never heard the footsteps again, or honestly footsteps that loud, and still don't have an explanation. Story 18. I was about 21 or 22 and living by myself at the time, and I left my window open on a pleasant night. It was low enough to the ground that you could get in if you really tried, but the screen wasn't easy to take off and I lived in a fairly safe neighborhood, so I didn't even think twice about it. I woke up in the middle of the night because I smelled smoke, and I reached out to turn on my lamp and my hand hit what was very obviously a person. My brain fully woke up at that point, and I realized there was a shirtless man in my bedroom, smoking a cigarette and staring at me. I remember yelling for him to get out, and I must have spooked him just as badly as he spooked me because he leapt out my window and took off. I slammed it shut and moved a bookcase in front of it, and when I went out the next morning in the daylight, I found the screen sitting against the house. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, and I haven't slept with a window more than cracked ever since. I also absolutely refused to live on the ground floor of a building. I don't know if he was planning to rob me or SA, me or both, but it was absolutely terrifying and makes me wonder how many times it happened, and I didn't wake up. Story 19. My brother, 12, and I, 14, were home alone, while our mom was away, probably for work or something. It was around 1 a.m., and the rain outside was coming down hard, like full-on storm mode. I was just about to head to bed when I noticed my brother had already turned off the lights in his room too. I went to bed, and managed to fall asleep pretty quickly. But my sleep was cut short by a loud banging, like someone pounding on glass. It was coming from the living room's sliding glass door. I was scared, but curiosity got the better of me. My room was directly across from the living room, so I cracked my door open just a sliver and peeked out. The house was nearly pitch black, and the only light came from the occasional flash of lightning. Through the darkness, I could just make out a figure standing on the other side of the glass door, completely still, soaking wet and facing the house. Just standing there, in the pouring rain. I couldn't make out what the person looked like, and I didn't really try. The second I spotted them, I instinctively pulled back, not wanting them to see me. The banging didn't stop. It was relentless and so loud it felt like the glass could shatter any second. I dropped to my hands and knees and started crawling toward my brother's room to check on him. Luckily, there were some chairs between me and the glass door, so I figured I was out of sight. When I reached his room and opened the door, I found him sitting on his bed in the corner, absolutely terrified. I was just about to grab the phone to call the police, and then the banging stopped. I paused, phone in hand. And I wish I could say I did the sensible thing, but I didn't call. I'm introverted as hell, and honestly, I was just really tired. So, I went back to bed. To this day, I do not know who that was. Story 20. Not really home alone, but when I was little, I remember as my dad was taking us to bed, I ran up first to sneak behind my bedroom door. The plan was to jump out and scare my brother before bed, as my bedroom was just opposite the bathroom and he had to walk past it to get to his room. However, behind the bedroom door was two strange men hiding. One had a beard and long hair, the other I don't clearly remember, but think he was very skinny. The guy with long hair whispered to me to go away, so I calmly went away and slept with my dad. Mum was working nights, and this wasn't uncommon for me, so he never questioned it. I was rightly spooked and didn't want to be on my own, but didn't tell my dad what I saw as I was petrified inside. Straight up thought I'd been told off by some creepy ghosts. We were robbed that night. My brother also woke up that night to go to the bathroom and saw the downstairs light on from the staircase. At the time he thought it was our mother and would normally run down and see her if he got up early. For some reason, he didn't go downstairs that night, and instead hopped in bed with me and our dad too. When my mum came home, the downstairs was trashed, and she was terrified. Something happened to us. She ran upstairs in a panic and found us all in bed safe and sound. Home insurance was able to salvage most of the losses, and we got a dog not long after that as a deterrent for thieves, which growing up never had another issue again. So, I guess not really unexplainable, but a strange and scary story. Story 21. I grew up in a very rural area. Our house was at the end of a dead-end road in the middle of Midwest farm country. In high school, I was in cross-country and track and found it easiest to run in the late evenings at night when there wasn't practice. One night, which was fairly well lit by the moon, I was running the last quarter mile to my house, and I saw someone else running toward me on the road from the direction of my house. I live on a dead-end road. There is nothing but farm fields behind it, and it definitely wasn't my mom running. It surprised me so much I stopped for a second to consider what I was seeing. I remember exactly what the runner was wearing, and I watched her run another 5 or 6 strides towards me before she disappeared or blended into the night like the predator or some such. Now it could have been exhaustion or dehydration, I guess, but I've run a lot farther and a lot longer than I did that night without seeing anyone materialize and evaporate. I never did again, either on that road or anywhere else. It was the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I ran home crying panic tears, and I am not ashamed to tell you about it. I couldn't bring myself to run at night again for a month. Story 22. I was just chilling in my room when I suddenly heard this loud thump coming from the back door. It was so loud it literally knocked me off my bed. Now, I had zero interest in investigating because, I enjoy living, but if someone was breaking in, I figured I should probably at least check it out. I messaged my friend all the details and asked her to FaceTime me. We got on the call and she muted herself so she wouldn't accidentally make any noise. I flipped the camera around so she could see exactly what I saw, just in case it was a person, and I died. I walked through the house, heart pounding, and made my way to the back door. It was locked, but I noticed the laundry room next to it was slightly ajar. Creeping over, I took a quick glance inside. Nothing. No one was there. Still on edge, I opened the back door. Again, nothing. Just rain and darkness. Feeling uneasy, I went back to the laundry room for a closer look, just in case something or someone was hiding. That's when I noticed it. The broom that's usually hanging on the wall was now sprawled across the floor. Turns out, all that noise? Yeah, the broom had just fell. Still, it almost made me crap myself. Story 23. This will get buried. But oh well. Around 2011, I was living in Nova Scotia on my own, sort of just took off after high school to have an adventure. Anyways, I had this wood frame bed that was awesome to sleep on. Always slept like a rock on that thing. Well, one night, I wake up, it's the middle of the night, and I feel a sort of pressure sitting on my chest like a cat or a book or something. I didn't own a cat. In my sleepy slumber, I couldn't have cared less about what was on me. I just wanted it off. So, I grab it and try to throw it aside on the ground, but it immediately comes back and hits me right in the chest. Well, I friggin' freaked. My initial freak out was so intense that I basically levitated off my bed only to come crashing back down and break 2 of the wooden frames that supported the mattress. So, I'm freaking, constantly grabbing this thing and throwing it aside, and it just keeps coming back and hitting me. After a very, very long 10 seconds, I realize that what I'm throwing is my own frigging arm. I must have been sleeping on it, or it was elevated too high, but my entire arm was frozen and asleep. I couldn't move it or feel it at all. I often think how funny that must have looked to an outsider. Seeing some idiot waking up and throwing his own arm around while throwing a total tantrum and freaking the F out, only to come to the slow realization that what he's trying to frantically detach from his body is one of his own limbs. In any case, it was horrifying at the time. Story 24. A couple of years back, I woke up at 3 a.m. to see someone walk past my bedroom door. I called out in my just woken up, not thinking haze, thinking maybe my boyfriend had come over while I was sleeping, but got no response, so knew it wasn't him. I got out of bed, stupidly forgetting to take my phone or any kind of defensive item with me, and went into the front room where the light was on to be met with a random guy staring at one of the walls. I asked him who he was and got no answer. At this point, I'd actually woken up enough to realize that I could really be in trouble. So, I ran back to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and ran outside on the phone to the police, who showed up within a few minutes. Turns out the guy was mentally ill, and to this day, neither myself nor the police know how he got in. Story 25. I moved into our house a month before my husband did, and I was painting our guest room with the windows wide open. I was busy painting, listening to music, when I realized it had gotten dark outside. I heard the leaves crunching outside but didn't think anything of it because we have a lot of neighbors who walk their dogs. When I went to close the windows, I saw a man standing in my backyard under the tree maybe 5 feet from our back door, staring up at me. I fell to the floor and realized the back glass door was probably open and nothing but the screen, which he could have easily just walked into my house. I crawled to my phone and called my husband, who then called 911 while rushing home to me. We have a 6 feet tall fence around our yard, and this person hopped it to watch me. I couldn't sleep right at night for months. Story 26. One day, while I was working afternoons a couple years back, I woke up at around 10 a.m. and started to watch American Dad before getting up. Next thing you know, I hear my back door open. A normal thing in our home since we only use the back door. But no one was supposed to be home yet. I assumed it was my mom and didn't think anything of it. Then I heard footsteps coming up the stairs as my bedroom was on the second floor. I called out to my mom and got no response. Then my door cracks open and a head pops in. It's a 30-ish-year-old man with a blonde beard and a big mane of greasy hair who looks shocked to see me. At the time, I was about 260 pounds, 6'3" and 20 years old, male. I was also sitting in my boxers only. Before I was able to realize what was happening, he asked, "Is this the residence?" To which I reply, "No." Then he makes a swift exit, and before I can recollect my thoughts, he's not even in my driveway. I talked to a family friend who is a veteran police officer, and turns out that a man had been pulling this kind of stunt to rob people in nearby towns. Story 27. One night I was home alone, grilling and chilling, drinking beer and smoking dope, about half lit, wearing my hoe clothes. It was a great time. As soon as I sat down to eat, I heard a woman yelling for help and pounding on doors. Once I realized she wasn't a threat to me, I sprinted up the road to find her. She was covered in blood and told me her husband was trapped in the truck he flipped. She kept trying to get me to help her pull him out of the truck, and I said, "Lady, I know this is an emergency, but I ain't no EMT." The worst part was, I live in the woods with no cell service, but luckily, I was able to get to my landlord's attention so he could call 911 from the landline. I was up until 3 a.m. that night, because I could not wind down after the fact. Everyone survived, and the guy got out on his own, but it was the scariest night of my life. Story 28. When I was 9, I was staying home alone. It was early morning. I had just gotten out of the shower and brushed my teeth. I put on my favorite outfit, set up a little area in the living room with my drink and a snack, and turned on the TV to watch. Then the phone rang. I went across the house to answer. The voice on the other end was familiar and very comforting. He asked about my day so far and made small talk. After a minute or so, he said, "I like your outfit. Is pink your favorite color?" I replied, "Oh, thank you. No, it isn't set. What were you planning on watching on TV?" It took me a few seconds to understand what was happening. As I was only 9 and very naive, the voice on the other end of the phone changed. It became deep and raspy and horrific. The voice then proceeded to describe how they were going to SA me and off me in graphic detail. I went numb. My skin felt as if it were on fire. My heart was racing. I had never been more terrified in my entire life. I slammed the phone down and called my mom at work. I tried to explain what had happened, and I'm sure I wasn't making much sense. She got on to me for answering the phone and told me to go back about my day. I remember trying to explain that he was watching me. He told me what I had been doing. He told me what I was wearing. I mentioned that I was going to call 911 because I needed help. That isn't necessary. I'm not coming home. Just don't answer the phone and go watch TV, she said, and I hung up. I was confused. I was scared. I could feel eyes on me. I pulled the curtains closed. I raced around the house and was torn between doing what I felt was right and doing what I had been told by my mother. This whole time the phone was ringing. The second it would stop, it would start again. The sound of the phone ringing would pulse through my tiny body like electricity and practically paralyze me. I was frozen and on fire at the same time. I waited for a pause in ringing and called 911. I'm home by myself and I'm 9 and someone is watching me and he is going to off me. She tried to keep me calm. She told me she would send help. I remember standing there listening to this kind voice trying to help me, but I could feel every horror movie scenario playing out behind me. Was he creeping up behind me with a knife? Was he going to shoot me through a window? Was he going to throw a rock through the glass and open the door? I couldn't breathe. I couldn't feel my body. But I was also overly aware of my skin. In a moment of panic, I set off the alarm to the house and ran outside. I remember this sense of relief, but also this overwhelming feeling of having a separation in my reality. The house felt small and dark and dangerous and cold. Outside felt open, safe, and warm. I could hear lawnmowers and birds chirping. It was a beautiful break from the bone-chilling feeling of the phone. It was like I was watching a movie, and I could see myself experiencing both of these environments at the same time. A neighbor was pushing his child in a swing. He was concerned. He let me stand next to him, and he protected me. I could hear the sirens, the blaring sound getting louder as they grew closer. It felt like it took an eternity, but the police arrived. He walked over to me and asked me what happened. I did my best to explain, but so many of the words the voice on the phone used were embarrassing. I couldn't bring myself to say such adult words to a police officer. His other words were bone-chilling. I couldn't say those either. I can still hear my young voice repeating. He was watching me. He said he's going to off me. Not long after, my mom's car pulled into the driveway. She, for some reason, decided to come home. She didn't look for me or come speak to me. She calmly got out and walked over to a police officer. I was standing in the doorway from the house to the garage, facing the driveway. I could see my mom, the police officer. I was watching, trying to understand, trying to figure out what was happening, and then I saw it, her laughter. She was laughing. My face was swollen from tears. My heart was still racing. My skin was on fire. And my mom was laughing. I slowly crept closer and overheard, "I'm so sorry about this." She just got scared being home alone and overreacted. What is happening? What did I do wrong? Did I imagine this? Was this a dream? Should I not have called 911? Did I overreact? My memory of what happened after that is hazy. I remember refusing to stay home alone, the sound of the phone ringing rippling through my body. It wasn't something I liked discussing. I refused to repeat what had been said to me by the voice on the phone. My mom decided she knew who did it. She didn't even know the details. There was no investigation. No one was questioned. She told me it was a boy my age who lived across the street. I knew it was impossible, and no matter how much I protested, I was always told it was him. Many years later, after I was an adult with children, we were at Christmas. Everyone was in the living room, and I had gone into a back bedroom to change a diaper. As I was walking out of the room and back into the living room, I could hear my mom laughing, her voice as if she had been telling a joke. The faces of everyone in the room told a different story: discomfort, anguish, shock, fear. Yet, she was still laughing. It felt as if I was walking in slow motion. One of my older children stopped me from entering the living room and sort of pushed me back into the room I had just come out of. She just told the story of you being home alone and the man threatening to off you. She told it like it was a joke, like a funny story from your childhood. I never learned who it had really been. I deal with my fear of ringing phones and phone conversations on a daily basis. Story 29. I was 17 years old, left alone from Thursday to Sunday with our family's dog, who was pretty small and starting to have trouble climbing stairs in his old age. I'd be working every morning while my parents were out of town. I came home from my shift on Friday and everything about the kitchen table was a mess. Napkins were taken out of the holder, all of the mail was thrown on the floor, salt and pepper shakers on the other side of the kitchen but together, and one of the chairs pulled far away from the table. Our dog's never done anything like this, and I'd be especially surprised if he was even capable of climbing to the top of the table. I reset it all. Saturday, I came back to find the exact same configuration. I don't have the pictures anymore, but every detail was just as I found the day before. Pretty much the entire night. I'm convinced that there's a ghost coming to get me, and I slept horribly and barely rested for work on Sunday. I left for work after making sure everything was in order, knowing my parents would be home before I got off. During my lunch break, I called my mom to ask about everything that had happened over the past 2 days. Instead of answering, she just said, "Yeah, why did you leave such a mess?" She didn't take any pictures, so I have no way to verify how bad it really was. But I honestly can't believe my old dog would have done all that 3 days in a row? And I'm not even sure he's strong enough to move chairs or climb onto the table. Nothing like this has ever happened while I was the one home alone. Story 30. Not technically home alone, but I was up after everyone else had gone to bed. After a night of television, my family, typically early risers, headed off to bed at around 10 p.m. Back in high school, I was even more of a night owl than I am today and would regularly stay up in my room reading and drinking Diet Lipton citrus green tea by the gallon. My room was across the house from everyone else's, so when I finally got tired, I would have to walk through the dark house to get to the bathroom and brush my teeth. At around 2 a.m., I began making this walk. As was my habit, I would turn on the lights in the next room before entering just because I was a little suspicious. The only room I could not do this in was the living room where we had all been watching TV that night, and which the bathroom is connected to. I made it to the bathroom without incident and brushed my teeth, no problem, but when I turned and looked back into the living room, there was a fire roaring, literally making noise in the fireplace. It had not been there when I walked through minutes before. I immediately went and turned on the lights and sat next to it for an hour just to make sure Satan wasn't coming. We had tried to light a fire earlier with damp wood, and it wouldn't take. My only guess is that the wind came down through the chimney and ignited it hours later. Story 31. I was once home alone during the holidays when I was 17. As I was working, my parents and siblings were approximately 200 miles away. It was about 2 a.m. I had just turned off all the downstairs lights, and I nipped into the bathroom before heading to bed. While I was on the toilet, I heard footsteps in the room next door. I froze, then managed to scream, "Dad, help!" Then I heard what sounded like glass smashing. I walked around but didn't see anything out of place. No broken glass or anything unusual. I wondered if I was imagining things. I just couldn't bring myself to go over there. I went to bed as usual, but when I woke up in the morning, I found the downstairs window wide open. It couldn't have been left open by accident. It was snowing outside. Overwhelmed, I called my mom, tears streaming down my face. The police arrived right away and were really great. It was clear the window had been forced open, and what I thought was broken glass was actually the shale we have below the window. It makes a similar sound when you jump on it. They took fingerprints and all, but they were pretty sure the case wouldn't go far. There had been a spate of robberies in the area recently. A week later, the police returned, looking stone-faced and a bit shell-shocked. They asked if they could search the garden, and that's when they found a bush hollowed out, littered with cigarette butts and empty beer cans. They basically told me this guy was a known peeping Tom, but they had been worried for a while that he might escalate to SA, as he was suspected in a few cases. They believed he knew I was home alone and waited until I turned off the lights and was completely alone before breaking in. When I called out and mentioned my dad, they said he freaked out and fled. As I hadn't seen the guy and that he could just say his prints were on the window from something else, my case never went any further. 2 years later, he was jailed for breaking into a woman's home, sets.a quoting and offing her. Sleep well, everyone. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.